We are very lucky to have June Ambrose in conversation with Cushnie and Michelle Ochs.
Good morning, good afternoon. Oh, this is nice. This is like a radio show. I know you guys have been here all morning, so good afternoon. I'm June Ambrose, and I have the pleasure of interviewing these most amazing women, talented and amazing women, not just of color, but of attitude and eccentricity. They're daring and fearless. I want them to introduce themselves, and then we're going to get into it.
Hi, I'm Cushnie. And I'm Michelle Ochs.
So now you know where the name came from. That's why I wanted them to do it. So I want to talk about things today that aren't Googleable. So we're going to start with the past, present, and then we're going to go into the future. My first question being, there is obviously a famine in fashion as it relates to being women of color. Not only is there a struggle for women equality, but there's also an absence of black designers. Do you feel a sense of pressure or responsibility?
In some ways, yes, but I think there's also a strong lack of female designers in general, regardless of even of color, that we're even a minority in ourselves, just being women. So, and that is something that is still surprising in this day and age, you think, and it is essentially an industry for women, but there's still very few of us.
This is true. How do you feel about that as well?
I mean, yeah, being female designers designing for women, you think that would be something so simple and easy to come by, and it's not, and we feel that, so.
Where do you feel that why do you think this is happening? Is it from early education? Is it from opportunity? Where do you feel that there's, what's missing? What's the missing piece to the puzzle? Have you figured that out yet, or are you still trying to figure it out?
I still haven't figured it out yet, because even still, like when Michelle and I went to Parsons, it was still predominantly women in our class. It was, so it's not like women aren't educating themselves in fashion and all of that. It's just, I think it's later on, it's the opportunity, or it's still very much a boys' club.
Well, let's talk about that, because even you started back in 2008.
Yes.
I mean, it was even worse then. We didn't have a woman running for president, so.
We thought we'd start at rock bottom. It can only go up, surely.
Let's talk about the rock bottom. Let's talk about what that experience was like. Where did you find the nerve to start this? Well, even to collaborate, because even as women, I think to collaborate is something that it deserves an applaud. Two women working together is quite, and seem to still get along, which is nice. Boy bands can't stay together. So talk to me about, where did you find the nerve? Where did this start? Where did this passion and fire and idea to collaborate come from?
Well, I mean, we were schoolmates at Parsons, and we had a very shared aesthetic, and I think we both equally had a passion for fashion. That's why we came to New York. That's why we came to Parsons. And it was just, you build a bond because you're working side by side, day in and day out, and you see each other grow as designers, and we just had a very similar aesthetic. And it was only until after Parsons that we talked about it. We were looking for opportunities in the industry. The idea is you go to school and get a job afterwards. And as you said, it was a very challenging time, but I think we took that into account, but we also felt a need once we left school, going into the working world, that our needs as women, or things that we saw aesthetically that we that we were designing into, wasn't out there. And it started that conversation, and it slowly, it grew very organically, how our business has grown, how we started, and it just became a conversation, and then looking for a job kind of faded away.
So how did you start? Did you, there was the two of you, there was 10 of you, how does this work?
No, it was just the two of us, and blind naivety.
Self-funded?
Yes, it was self-funded. No one was going to give us any money at that time.
Talk to me about that. Why is that?
because I mean, to be honest,
I want to say we didn't have a job, but we were interns for a very long time.
we had interned.
There was no
everywhere.
W-2 for an intern.
Right.
So like, it was like, first it was like a
Facts.
resume. A resume was a little thin.
Let's just start hashtagging the facts now, people, for social.
Remember when they didn't pay for interns? Yeah.
No, but so, yeah, we had internships, and we were on the cover of WWD when we graduated. So we had good things behind us, but that still wasn't enough, especially as, you know, the financial industry was collapsing. So, so there was no one who was going to be really willing to invest that kind of money.
It's too risky.
Yeah.
So how did you get past that? How did we navigate our way through that? Because some may have considered that to be a defeat and give up. How did you navigate through that?
I mean, we always tell our interns, like, you think you're not learning anything when you're there. Just, there's so much you learn by just being there and keeping your ears open. And just, we took our experience from our internships and kind of took we wouldn't do that, or we would do this. And, the things about growing organically, because, the huge plight for young designers is there's one thing designing, but you have to deliver. And I think that's the new phase of what you have to start focusing on outside of school. Is like, that's great designing, but now you're a business and you need to operate as a business, and getting your product to the stores on time. And with the crisis and everything, it allowed us to grow slow and steady than kind of like hockey puck, where we were able to not kind of make the big major mistakes that could get you in real trouble, like taking on an order you couldn't fulfill, or some of these things that we've heard young designers go through. So we actually used it as an opportunity to grow smart, so we wouldn't have the pitfalls that you've heard so many times young designers fall into.
Did that make you more of a cautious designer?
Not design-wise.
Okay.
It didn't make us more cautious that way. It was more in terms of, there were things that Michelle and I believed in were extremely important that had to be done in order to make it a successful business. We had to make sure that our quality was good and that we shipped on time. Otherwise, if you ship past the window, then they can cancel your order, then you're left with merchandise, and they haven't given you the money because they pay net 30 and you've paid for this all up front.
Right.
And, and for us, our team has been very, very, very small for a long time. It was obviously just Michelle and I for a while, and then we were 5 to 6 people up until we got an investment at the end of 2015. So
See how long that took? So I'm glad you bring that up about investments. And there's a big misconception, and I think to be somewhat of a hidden secret. This company is, in fact, owned by you still.
Yes.
yeah.
It is for us, by us. Yeah. And made in
Manhattan.
America. No, that is there's something to be said about that. I mean, there are very few brands that are made in the USA still, and you guys have placement. You are in a number of retail stores. Let's talk about that growth and how, what was your breakthrough in terms of at a retail level? I know you got your financial financing recently, but you were still, before that, you guys were at retail stores. And what would you say was the big moment, the aha moment, where you're like, oh my goodness, this is happening? This is no longer like a
getting your first order in general. You can start a collection and just, there's so many moments, but, Linda Fargo really believing in us, and we sold our first collection. We saw the buyers, we were showing everything. When you start a business, it's well, I wouldn't say a one-woman sport, two-woman sport, but there are just moments like that where you work so hard, and especially when the buyers believe in you to buy, and then when the customer wants to part with that money and say, I believe in this, and buy your product. I think just you know, the magazines and the press and everything, that's really great, but when a woman who works hard for her money goes into a store and puts something on and loves it and spends that money, I think that's the biggest thing for us still.
Yeah, that's awesome. What made you cry?
Long nights.
Because I know you cried.
We cried
cried.
after our first show.
Oh yeah.
We cried when
So
we...
let's talk about the first show, because we're in the past right
We cry
now.
all the time. We cried when our clothes were, I think, first at Bergdorf, and then Linda Farger came out and said something really lovely
that
about
was
us,
really
and we cried
embarrassing.
then. And then...
It was our first clinic, and Linda came down to support us, and then we just started crying.
Now, was the order a small order, and was it kind of like?
I mean, it was large to us at the time.
Yeah.
We were very excited.
It was $17,000.
Yeah.
which is a big deal.
We still have the check.
That's
we have
amazing.
photocopy it. We did deposit
Yeah,
that.
right, I was gonna say. Don't be Bill Cunningham about it. Let's talk a little bit about your inspirations. Like, you know, there's some really amazing greats that came before you that we can all say you stood on the shoulders of. Whose shoulders did you stand on as designers? Like, who inspired you?
God, so many. It's hard. There's
Just one. I won't pressure you. Maybe two, because it's two of you.
There's different designers who, I guess, inspire us for different reasons. I was lucky enough to intern for Oscar de la Renta a few years back, and a long time ago. This brand is 9 years old. And you know, for me, his work ethic was amazing. You know, I had no idea going there, like how much he would really be a part of it. You know, how much, you know, he was really that hands-on. But he really was involved in every aspect of the company still, and he had such an inherent understanding of his woman, better than anybody. You know, and even like he had other designers underneath him who, you know, were also making, you know, designing great things, but, you know, he knew that his woman would not wear it like that, and she wears it like this and like that. And it was just a very beautiful thing to watch, and everyone really admired him, and everyone loved working for him, from his designers to the seamstresses and just the way he sort of treated the people who worked for him. It was very admirable.
But even before Oscar, you know, when you were thinking about going into college for it, like, who was it? Always like someone like an Oscar, or did you go back into the 70s? And, you know, were there any of those kind of iconic individuals that you were like, ooh?
I just think, I mean, I don't know for you, but like it was more that group of New York designers. I think that's specifically why I chose Parson. It just had such a long history of quintessential New York designers that you thought, like, this is where I want to learn and be in.
Were you raised in New York?
No, I was raised in Maryland.
So you're a Maryland girl. And
London.
No, you're from London? Couldn't tell.
It's so funny still when people ask to identify ourselves.
Yeah.
Like, she's the one with the English
Yeah,
accent.
right. No. But now, what nationality are you?
I am Filipino and German.
And you are
Jamaican.
but you identify as black.
Yeah.
Yeah. It's a great combination. It's good food here. I know you guys are always cooking up something. So let's talk about, you know, a sense of responsibility. Being women of color and of ethnic background, do you feel a sense of responsibility when it comes to the marketing and the imaging of this brand, in terms of identifying that you come from this is, you know, there's a DNA or an essence, a sense of that heritage. Do you think about that in the process?
In the process of designing, you mean? Or?
Designing, marketing, you know, do you think about the backside of a woman with curves? Do you think about, like, you know, do you want to put a black model in that campaign? Because that's really important. You know, is there a voice that calls on you when you're when you're in that process?
Oh yeah, absolutely. I mean, for us, even, you know, casting our show, we definitely want to have a range of different women of all diversities. You know, it's, you know, people have told us before that our collections are pretty diverse comparatively, especially to a lot of designers, but it is something we think about because we do want to represent all types of women, because all types of women do wear our clothes, and we do think about that all the time, just even from you know, even from our office, because, you know, our things tend to be very close to the body, so we fit and fit and fit to make sure it's perfect. So you know, we have our
It's
staff.
very forgiving, though.
And that's it, and
yeah,
because
it's
we
very
are
forgiving.
conscious
Trust
of women with big busts, women who don't
Yeah.
have big busts, or are, you know, are very curvy or less curvy, and it's, you know, for us, and our buyers have come to love it. We use a lot of stretch in our fabrics, and that's what really helps us, you know, hold shape, but also allow like a multitude of women to wear it and feel comfortable and confident. And if the dress is designed a certain way that you can't wear a bra, that you're supported, that it's lined. You know, there's lots of things, you know, you will go to a store and you'll find a dress that's like, okay, that's lovely, but it's see-through. Am I going to go and buy a slip for this now? You know, it's not, you don't want to have to do that. So, you know, you want to just to be able to slip on a dress and feel great.
Yeah. See, I think that's only these little things, these little nuances, only a woman would
Thinks
know.
about,
Yeah, we
yeah.
love male designers, but sometimes I'm like, he wasn't thinking. You know, it's those little things that you just
Go put
said.
that on.
You know, right? It's like, or you're like, oh, I would love to see. But you just described the DNA, all the things, you know, the fears that we have as women when we're putting on clothes. These are some of the things that matter. And you just described those as women because you're living, you know, you're living through the collection, you're breathing life into something and you're living it, which is really nice and refreshing. Let's talk a little bit about what are some of the biggest misconceptions, whether it's about you and the business. So there's a two-part question.
I think the biggest
Individually
the biggest misconception is that we had to fight a lot against this, but that you have to be a size 0 to wear our clothes. And I think we've grown past that, but in the beginning, I think it was a challenge. I think it's easy to compare a female designer to the women on the runway and just say, well, you know, you guys look like that, so of course you guys can wear that. Like, I don't think so much that the men get compared to like what they put out there. And I think that's also part of, you know, they were like,
So
well,
you're saying that there's a little bit more of a stereotype, or you feel like they question you more
Right, because
as women?
yeah, they were like, well, you two look like that. That's why you can design things like that. And you have to
But if you had a
look
beard,
like
it wouldn't be a
and
problem,
you have to
right?
be 0, and you have to, and not 0 either,
Right.
so I'll tell you that. But it was hard, because, you know, for the female designers, you have to be in your clothes all the time, and we wouldn't put anything out there that we wouldn't wear ourselves. So, you know, it'd be nice to show up after a show and be in a t-shirt and jeans one time. That would be really nice. But there is more of that responsibility when you have to, like you said, live in it and breathe in it. And, you know, you think about these little nuances.
That's, what about you in terms of misconceptions?
Yeah, I mean, that's really our biggest one. I feel like we've had to, you know, fight that one a lot, just even because, you know, I think, you know, certain designers who I guess their aesthetic is a little bit more loose-fitting or sort of like
Right.
oversized, or I think you kind of more have to be a waif to pull that off, because
Yeah.
because you look it kind of just drapes over you, and you don't really get to see a woman's figure. And
Yeah.
for us, what we try and do is always celebrate a woman's figure. So it does, no matter what size you are, you know, really works. I mean, we've dressed Ashley Graham a number of times, and she's a size 14, 16. So it does work on a multitude of bodies, and that's what we always try to do.
I'm going to dig a little deeper, though, because that was a great brand answer. Now I want to know about, you know, personally. I think people don't get a chance to know designers, and you become the face of your brand. And That's distracting. But that was, felt like scandal. You no, you become the face of your brand. People don't necessarily see you. So, in these kind of beautiful forums and symposium situations, you can actually allow people to see you. So what is your pet peeve? Like, what is it that's just, if you can really speak on it, what's one of your biggest pet peeves?
People think because our clothes are like, very sexy and very strong and empowering that like we're like super bitch mean girls. Right. So that's probably, Michelle and I are really chill. So,
they are. They're delish. Yeah.
So that's a really big misconception.
That's a good one. No, because fashion itself, I think, has an attitude.
Yeah.
Especially when you're in high fashion, it tends to be somewhat of like it's not the most approachable to the average consumer. And speaking of that, in terms of price point, was that a factor in creating your collection? Who you catered to, what the price point was, affordability? Did you care about that, or any of these things? Were they an issue then? Are they an issue now? As fast fashion is taking over, and we're trying to really get consumers to focus on quality again and not quantity.
Mm-hmm. I think it's a loaded question, but
yeah, I'm sorry.
No, starting back, I think when we started designing, we just went with what we had experience with. It's being in New York, being in Parsons, working alongside designer price points and factories that were here. So I think we went with what we knew and had the experience in, and obviously we want to dress a range of women and offer products for her, and that's something that we're focused on, growing categories and offering other price points, because for us as women, like, it doesn't do anything for us if we just design something beautiful and it hangs on a rail. Mm-hmm. Like, we want women to be in our clothes, and we want to make things that you want to buy. And I know, there's the design part and it's all glamorous, but at the end of the day, this is a business, and we consider ourselves business women, and in order to survive, you have to sell, and we want her to respond and buy our designs. So we think about that.
For anyone who's in the room that's kind of aspiring to be you as well, what advice would you give them? It's a really tough retail time. Retail is not easy right now for so many reasons. Someone starting out, what would the old you tell the new you today? I know, they hate me. But I feel like you guys want to know, no? Yeah?
Yeah. I'd say probably, first of all, learn on somebody else's dime for a little bit. Yeah. Because the
huge financial exposure. Yeah.
It is. And so much of that, it's moving so fast, and so much of it is really moving online. We just launched our e-commerce at the end of last year.
Which is beautiful, by the way.
Thank you.
Really
and
nice.
And that was just, sort of imperative for us. We really had to get online, because I feel like, everybody's online. You have to be able to have that presence online. So
so that then becomes your front-facing global brand. I believe in digital marketing and digital retail. That e-commerce space to me is a fastly growing industry and business and platform. I think that especially as a new designer starting out, you can't take for granted the fact that you may not get to retail as fast as you want, but you have the power to grow your business through your e-commerce space. So I always say to people, don't discount. I told a designer the other day, I said, don't stress yourself about getting into, Macy's and these big box stores that are going to have major chargebacks and could put you out of business. I said, make them chase you, make them want you so bad that they're begging for it. It's a new strategy. It's kind of an old school strategy. You'd have a hit record, and you're going through different towns, and you're selling your singles, and you wouldn't give it to a record shop. You would just make them want it, and go old school with it. I think that's not such a bad advice. That's really good advice.
And you have to do everything yourself in terms of like getting your stuff, giving it to your friends and having people wear it, or because you can really get stuff out there with social media and stuff like that, and create a want for something, before it's really
Do
in
you
any
feel
major
that
stores.
pressure now to be more active on your social platforms, individually and as a brand? Now that, I think the climate has changed. Like, consumers want to know the designers. So designers have become celebrities and superstars, whereas before they didn't necessarily, it was all, they could hide behind the brand. But I feel like designers are now becoming more and more of the personalities, and the consumer knowing you more brings them closer to wanting to actually buy and invest in you. Do you feel that pressure a little bit now?
I think it's in a good sense for us, just purely because we have had customers say to us, like, oh, when I tried this on, I knew it was designed by a female designer, and then they go
Wow.
back and they know it was. So I think in that sense that they
That's
have
great.
some kind of relationship with us in that sense. I think that's important. But I think it's good sometimes to give a little bit of a story. I think it helps someone feel more attached to something. Or, I mean, there's a lot of options for women to choose for whatever they want to wear these days. So I feel like if they feel a connection, like, oh, I really respect them for this or for the way they do that, I think it can help sell product.
What is your what's your focus right now in terms of marketing and branding, and like what are you mainly focused on? Is it the digital aspect? Right now I know you're working on your runway show. What's life like now? Let's get into the present a little bit and talk about what's going on in your lives now.
Having being able to adapt, I think, would be the biggest advice you could give, because digital wasn't important when we started, and now it is. And yes, we're focusing more on digital, but it's also, with the launch of our e-commerce and learning that new space. But when we started, Instagram didn't exist. That's really weird to say. It didn't exist. Like, not that
I
we
know.
weren't on it.
I
It
used to
didn't
tweet.
exist.
I used to tweet with pictures, and people were like, You're so annoying. I'm going to unfollow you because you always put a picture with your tweet, and that's not what this is for."
Yeah.
I was like, "Excuse me," because I felt like you could tell more of a story in a photo.
Yeah.
I should have invented Instagram. Wouldn't be sitting here right now. I'd be on a yacht in Sardinia. But I forecasted it. Where do you forecast things? Speaking of forecasting, where do you see this going? What can we expect? I mean,
you have to do what's right for your brand and what you feel comfortable with, because I think a lot of people are jumping on some trends and some bandwagons, but at the end of the day, if it resonates with your customer, then do it. Or if it makes it easier for you to reach your customer, then do it. I think the door's open now for the way we grew, just being more organic and finding different avenues. It's not so clear, we're not, the way Ralph and Mark and Donna and everyone started their line. It was like boom, boom, boom. This is what you do. This is where you get in. This is where you're going. So it's exciting, but it also presents a lot of challenges. And again, learning the hard way.
so would you consider yourself risk takers in a sense?
I mean, yeah, I guess so.
Are you Mavericks? Today's Maverick Monday on my social media. And I'm talking to two Mavericks, so it's exciting.
I think it's because you never know what people are going to respond to, and you just, as long you believe in it and put it out there, I think, it is always a gamble. It's nothing is guaranteed. So,
But every season's a gamble. Every time you're designing something new, it's a gamble. So, and you kind of, and often you've been doing this for 9 years, and you think, God, how am I going to come up with something else? But then you do.
Yeah.
So,
What disappoints you the most about what's happening now in terms of the fashion climate? What's the most disappointing thing happening that you feel a sense of, that you feel you want to use your voice right now to speak on?
I think right now, I think the issue right now with the fact that there's so many different things going on, I think it was more successful when we all worked together, and it's just like, okay, as a calendar, we are showing fall, and we're doing this and this and this. And then now some people are doing this, some people are doing
ready
that,
to buy,
and it's kind of like, it
Stay in
kind
your
of
lane.
dilutes the whole thing. Like, some people, Kanye's showing whenever he wants, and then and then
Right.
Tom Ford is showing fall, and Burberry
So you feel
showing
like
fall,
it's
and some
losing
people
its
showing
structure,
spring.
or it's
Yeah, I think
losing its eliteness?
yes.
It's hard to follow everything now. It's just like we're coming out of PreFall. I feel like, where did that go?
Right.
Like, I don't remember it happening. Like, because, it used to be at Bryant Park, and there used to be this date and this date.
Yeah,
I think we're a little more old school in that regard, but
Do you
it's
feel like it's because the climate at retail is changing? Everyone's trying to figure it out, like how we can make it
I mean,
better.
there's
Because
been
I know
like
that
lots
was
of
an issue with the
discussions about
CFDA.
it, but nothing has actually even really been done. Even though there was a meeting recently in England with all the heads from all the major fashion cities, but still nothing's really been decided that okay, this is what we're going to do.
And is the brand sold globally yet? Is it international? Is it overseas?
Yeah.
That's a big deal.
Yeah.
And still made in USA. That's
Yes.
exciting. So I lost my train of thought because I got excited about international. Would you say you've broken the glass ceiling?
in some ways, yes. I think we have a long way to go. I feel like it's just fashion is challenging. I know it's not easy. It's being businesswomen. I think we're always going to be presented with challenges that are going to face us, and I don't think it's ever really going to be gone. But thank God there's two of us.
Right.
I mean, that's what we think
Who
about
gets
all
to
the
go on
time. We
holiday
think
for? Do you
about
take
that all
vacation at the
time.
same time?
Well, the thing is,
does that work?
initially we didn't, but then sometimes,
They don't book meetings with the other one.
so we
If
always
one's
have to
not
be
there,
together
so it's
to
better
make
if we're just
decisions.
both gone.
Well, that's nice.
Yeah,
So you both have to be in a room to make a decision.
Yeah.
So nothing gets done if
Yeah.
one of you are missing.
yeah.
That's cool. So you are on runway deadline.
Yeah.
Can't believe you're sitting here so calmly. Did you guys sleep last night?
Yeah,
After
a little
Super
bit.
Bowl.
Now, so let's talk about the model casting, because I know that's also in terms of diversity on the runway. And let's talk about weight being an issue. When you casting your models, are you looking at the size, whether if a girl is 2, if she's fetal looking, looks underdeveloped?
We,
Does that bother you?
as just a general, just from our sort of perspective, we've never really tend to cast girls that are really sort of young, frail looking
Mhm.
because
Androgynous.
Yeah.
we've always gone for the girls that are strong, powerful looking, that
Mhm.
really have a presence, and
Mhm.
that's always been our aesthetic. So it doesn't lend itself to that sort of frail looking girl. We have been asked about, plus size and all of that,
Mhm.
and we have had plus size girls in our show like Crystal Wren in the plus, although she's not that big, to be honest.
Well, plus size in fashion is my size.
She's like,
I'm plus size. For your past is 6'8", you're plus. I told them that. I was like, I need something to wear, but I'm plus size. They were like, I was like, yeah.
but the thing is, what is difficult is that, you're making clothes for a show. You're then altering everything for 30 girls.
Yeah.
It's hard to say, suddenly, we fit all our clothes. We're designing our clothes and we fit all our clothes on our house model.
Mm-hmm.
To then start making things for all different
You
sized
have to be
girls.
going into that business.
To walk down one runway,
Yeah.
that's great madness.
Okay.
But work-wise for us, it's already hard enough it is to make sure everything fits each girl perfectly in time for the
Right.
show, because you're still casting just a couple of days before.
Yeah.
So to have girls all different sizes and be making things for a runway for girls that are size 2 and a girl that's a size 10, it's
But you also, but the great thing is you have the opportunity to kind of use that on social, to tell that story on social media and through your social platforms. You can have, there have been women who are not model sizes, i.e. Michelle Obama
Yeah.
and other, very famous actresses that have worn your brand, that you then get to say,
yeah, no, absolutely. No, we've been really lucky with that. Michelle Obama, Mary J. Blige, Jennifer Hudson. There's been women
Yeah.
with bodies that.
yeah, real size
Yeah.
women. Okay, so you don't feel like you've broken the glass ceiling. Did we answer that question?
We kind of.
Oh, we
danced
skated
around
over it. Did we skate over it?
Skated on it.
It's a tough one. It's a tricky question because you don't want to say you did, because why?
I mean, we still have a lot to do.
Yeah.
So,
Yeah, but you know, you are the 1%, right? So you're here today talking and speaking as Black designers or women of color, and you're the 1%. And then you're women, so then you become a fraction of that even more.
Right.
Right?
Yeah.
So you're minorities, you know. So let's talk about what you're hopeful, if you can make a proclamation today. And this is a time we have to use our voices as women, because we are, I think we are at the place where we no longer need to, I'm not going to ask for permission. I don't need your permission to be what I'm going to be. I think this is a year of saying that, proclaiming that. I think it's a female revolution is coming soon. It's coming now, it's happening. Resist. I think that we need to proclaim certain things in order to move forward. So I want you to be able to use this opportunity to kind of proclaim and kind of say what you're hopeful for moving into the future, because the next 4 years we really don't know what to expect. You know, we're transitioning into something very new and uncharted waters. So what would you want to, you know, if you could kind of arm your soldiers? I mean, we're all soldiers in here in a sense. We're your army. You know, what would you want to say to us to get us ready to move forward as visionaries, as women of color, as creators, creative individuals? And there are men in here too, and I think that men, we need he for she's. You know, I think that's important as well.
I just think, you know, we're in our 9th year in business, and we're going to hit that decade mark next year. And I think there were a lot of milestones leading up to that, and investment being one of them. But I mean, I look forward to kind of that decade mark and solidifying our brand. And it's going to be a big moment for us, because so many, I mean, we've seen so many of our peers have to, you know, shut down. And the fact that we're still here, that we're still made in New York, and we're able to do what we want to do, given that we're the 1%, I think that's really hopeful. And the fact that we've made it this far, I think really solidifies that. Because I mean, you think about the big people who come through New York, and then you've got Ralph and Donna and Oscar and everything, and then you've got smaller brands. And I don't think we've gotten to that middle yet. You know, like you think smaller brands and then the mega corporations. And I think we've shown that we're blossoming outside of what people would consider like a new designer, and that brands can still be made and created in New York and have longevity. And I think that's really hopeful for us and for anyone who wants a design that, you know, it's a different time, and no, you're not going to be like Ralph Lauren trying to sell ties down 7th Avenue. That's not going to work anymore. But it's a new way to get there. But the fact that I don't want to say been around that long, because it's not long, 10 years, but in fashion years, that's a long time.
Are you looking to go into new categories as well in the future?
yeah.
So let's talk about what those categories would be, like footwear, handbags, the obvious categories, or maybe leather thongs. I don't know.
Thinking about that. Well, we did a collaboration last year with Bandier for activewear, and then we have, for this year, we've taken it on fully ourselves. So we have
That's
an
awesome.
activewear line as well ourselves.
Did you guys know that? Did you know that? Oh, that's good. See, you're learning something. See, that's good.
Yes, and then we are, bags and shoes are in the works.
That's awesome. Okay. Okay.
Yeah.
So, did you proclaim something today? What are we proclaiming today?
Proclaiming for the future, you mean?
Yeah. What are you hopeful for? What are you hopeful for? Maybe I should rephrase the question. What are you hopeful for? What would you like to see change? I know you've gotten very little sleep. She's like, I got 3 hours.
The show is so close, I can't think.
No, that's right. Your brain is like on overload right now because there's so much going on. So thank you for being here too.
Yeah.
I know it's a really tough time for designers, so can we give them an applause for that? So I know it's not, there's a lot going on. Yeah.
I I think my hope is that, you know, the industry itself gives, you know, a little bit more room for new talent and different talent.
Mm-hmm.
I think that, you know, it was initially in the beginning, it was very hard to get, you know, certain editors to come to our shows, to get certain, you know, even...
And that's important, isn't it?
No, it is important.
Yeah.
You can barely even get any space in a magazine because all the advertisers who advertise in the front of the magazine, but then get the editorials as well.
Right.
So, you know, and so it was very difficult. And I get, you know, it's also difficult for magazines because they, you know, it's an expense for them
Right.
to,
It's
you
a
know.
business,
So I
right?
think my hope is just that, you know, there is more opportunity and more avenues for younger designers to get their work shown and available to people who want to buy something different that's not been copied by Zara and everything else
Right.
already.
Yeah, that changes the business. Now, do you feel like retailers respond to, are they asking for certain things? Like, you know, if a new designer is trying to start out, you know, they're looking at you guys, you know, you did break the glass ceiling because you did what was nearly impossible for so many. You know, you started off, you were funding it yourselves, and you could have run out of money and given up, but you kept going and you found the money.
Mm-hmm.
And, you know, that's half the battle, right? So it's like, but then you get to the convincing of the retailers that you can deliver on time,
Mm-hmm.
that you are going to write paper and you're going to actually, and you're putting people in place to to really run the business. So it's not just you two making clothes and then selling them out of the back of a car. Like you have a CEO, you have a CFO, you have, you know,
I mean,
all
we
these.
have that now.
Yeah.
We didn't for a really long time.
But now, was that an issue? Were retailers concerned, oh, okay, if I write this paper, can you guys actually deliver?
I mean, it definitely makes a difference having a male CEO in the office now in terms of sometimes difficult conversations. I think it does. Even, you know, we were an office of just 5 women, and I think and 5 very strong women we all got a lot done. I mean, we did for years. And, you know, but
Girl
I think...
gang.
But, you know, there were certain things... I mean, obviously, our CEO is extremely experienced, and that's what we rely heavily on. But, you know, I think some people did prefer, you know, having certain... wouldn't take us seriously necessarily initially because we're just women. So, I mean, I think that's changed now a little bit as the brand has gotten older and more established.
They saw us more as, you know, with the guys, they're businessmen. We're designers. We're not businesswomen and designers. So,
Oh, did we touch on that?
so I think it made
You
it
know,
very
the
challenging
equality.
initially, like, you know, who's running
So
the
them
business? You're
taking
like,
you
"Us."
serious as a business person and not just as these creative
It was something that
women.
you also said the other day, your analogy of no one says a working dad, but they
That's
say a
right.
working mom.
We talked
And
about
so,
that.
you
The
know,
double standards are disgusting.
So,
So that is one of your things
Yeah.
that you're proclaiming, that we kind of address the double standard and we try to erase the double standard.
yeah.
I mean, there's so many things that I think we will proclaim this year. I think that I'm looking forward to seeing how the brand evolves because I know it's going to grow. And your 10-year anniversary, that's a huge milestone.
Yeah.
We're going to party. And I think that, you know, again, we're at a time where our voices are we're no longer whispering. I think that we've found our voice as women and women of color especially. I think that we feel for some reason very comfortable being vocal about that. I know I do. I proclaim this. I am not going to be a warrior. I'm going to be a warrior. Yeah. And we're going to bring about change, and we're going to stand on the shoulders of young women like this to say that it is possible. We are possible. It can be done. And that's what I want to leave you guys with today is hope. You know, I think that if you continue to recognize that, if you think about the things that can't be done, it's a distraction. Think about the things that have been done. and move forward with that vision. Because there's been a lot that's been done. We learned about it today. If you've gone through the history of people that were here before us and really accomplished great things. So everything else is an excuse. It's possible. We have to get the information, and that's what this is about. Thank you for sharing.
No,
and if there's
absolutely,
anything else
because
you feel is important.
I think if you think about like, oh, well, I'm a woman, I'm not sure if I can do that, or I'm a person of color, or this, and this is what's holding me back.
I'm a
then
minority, so this, it's what it is.
But to have that on your shoulders will just weigh you down.
Yeah.
And I think for us, because we didn't really think about it, all we really thought about was just really designing the best we could and getting the product made well on time, was all we were really dedicated to. And then that's what, really pushed us through. And then, there were times that, we actually sat back and thought about it. It's just like when we were at the CFDAs and like Michelle said to me, she's like, you're the only woman of color here. There was Tracy Reese was there as well. And then
even on the board of the CFDA, there's no judge or no one of color, and that's something to proclaim as well. Figure that out. But I love that you recognize that, and that's what I'm saying. There is a sense of responsibility. I think that forging ahead with that, keeping that in mind, that we have to encourage more. And I think you're doing that and don't even realize that you're doing that by existing, by pushing forward and continuing to, break the stereotypes as women. Does anyone have a question for me? They're not speaking anymore. Because I feel sorry for them. They're exhausted. We have 10 minutes. Nope, 8 minutes.
June, I would love to hear a little bit more about how you came into styling, just very briefly, and what inspires you.
See, look at that, 10 minutes of that. It's interesting enough. I started almost 20-something years ago, and when I started in the music industry as a costume designer, there really were no fashion stylists at the time in the music industry, especially in urban music. It was kind of like rock and roll. You showed up and you jumped in front of the camera and you shot a music video. Music videos were $50,000 at the time. I remember at my height doing a video for $4 million. So, when I came into that space, the white space there was no one costume designing and telling the story and helping the character develop the artist at the time and change the narrative of urban black music. My goal was to be like the Edith Head of the music industry. I was like Edna from The Incredibles, really short and very with these big crazy ideas and big glasses. And, our goal was to get MTV to play black music. That was at the time, we were very focused on creating music videos that were just mind-blowing and they didn't look the way they were supposed to. So whereas if you were a gangster rapper, you're not a gangster. This is a character. Al Pacino, Robert De Niro's not a gangster. He was playing the character. So my whole stylology and psychology and getting, my mused celebrities to play along with me was, let's play dress up. Let me create and design costumes around, give this narrative, this verse, a voice, a visual voice. And that's what I did. Designers told me no. They were not interested in dressing. At the time, Todd Oldham was the first designer to let me into his showroom. And because they didn't get it. They were like, a music video, what, a who? And I was designing the costumes because I couldn't get the clothes. And I would go to, I had to figure out for myself. I didn't intern as a stylist. I had to figure out where the clothes came from before they went to retail. So I figured that out. Then I was reading all these books on costume design and theory and color and film and understanding how this color was going to translate on camera and how this garment was going to be produced and what this material was going to do when I did. And I was self-taught in that way, and it was trial and error, and I was making costumes made out of lights that was attached to car batteries. I was flying in things from finding materials that were from Japan, LED lights. I was designing blow-up suits for Missy Elliott that were made out of patent leather and figuring out how I was going to keep them inflated. I was with a bicycle pump behind her, pumping up the air between shots. I decided that I was going to put Puffy in a shiny suit. Why? Because you didn't wear shiny clothes in the ghetto. You wanted to be discreet and undercover and camouflage and dark. And I was like, nope, you're going to be from outer space. I'm from the Caribbean. I'm Antiguan. And in Carnival, everything was shiny and metallic. So for like 2 years, everyone wore shiny clothes in hip-hop music videos. It was like, so I knew that I had a huge responsibility, not just to myself, but to the culture. And in terms of brand development and branding, that was my MO. That was my motive. My motive and my inspiration was to change the narrative of how people looked at people who had no money, how we were gonna forecast our future, how we were gonna break through, I was a hidden figure. There were glass ceilings, and I can sit here proudly and say, I am no more. And yes. And for a time, I was like, for a second, they almost made me ashamed of being responsible or part of and having a hand in changing how we were perceived by saying, oh, you're a hip-hop stylist. And I thought, oh, God, I'm just a hip-hop stylist. And that I felt like they were trying to basically say it was degrading to be that but then I was like, no, wait, hold on. Hip-hop is what we became. And we broke through. We were wearing, my clients and we were the first endorsement deal, the whole thing that's happening now with celebrities and endorsements and all that. In the 90s, in the early 2000, 2001, I was remixing everything Adidas on Missy Elliott. And then I went to Adidas and said, listen, I've pretty much redesigned every piece of your collection. You should be doing a deal with this woman. And then I went on to become the creative director for her line, and that was one of the first celebrity endorsement deals that happened. A lot of people don't know that. But if I was afraid and ashamed of taking responsibility for that, I almost erase the past that made me what I am today. So I have to, I think that what hip hop has become is, it's changed the face of pop culture itself. And we were on the cover of every major magazine, Vanity Fair, Chanel, and all the runway shows. I started seeing the influence of what I was doing in music video on the runway. So, long story short, I was the nasty woman who dared. Damn it.
Thank you so much, ladies.